Hello everyone, welcome to a new chess video. In this video, we're going to see how to win at chess with a hyper-aggressive opening, which is the Danish Gambit, also called the Hell Gambit on this channel. We're going to use a game played 150 years ago as a guide. Yes, because this gambit has been used for a long time, and you'll see it's truly spectacular. So let's pay close attention. White starts with the king's pawn to e4, and black responds with the most traditional move in the world, which is the double king's pawn. You already know that the most common move here, without a doubt, is knight to f3. We could also play moves like bishop to c4, or even knight to c3 or f4, but they're going to use a move we've seen several times on the channel, which is playing d4 directly. An extremely interesting move. The idea is that now you're telling black, hey, capture this pawn, because if you don't, you're going to be in a very bad spot. For example, if you defend it, I'll advance, this knight will have to move, and I'm gaining a spectacular amount of space. You're getting trapped back there, and I don't think this has very good prospects for you. Therefore, almost every time, they're going to capture this pawn here. Very well, and now, how can we continue? Well, in fact, we could continue as players of the Scotch opening or Scotch gambit might with knight to f3, but the Hell gambit or Danish gambit is characterized by giving up two pawns, okay? In exchange for two bishops that are gonna be spectacular. For example, this one will be placed on c4, and if they let us, we'll put this one on b2. And how are we going to do that? Well, first, by playing c3, attacking this black pawn, and they can decide whether to capture it or not. Obviously, they'll have to capture it, because imagine if they don't and play, say, knight to c6. We'll recapture the pawn, they no longer have a material advantage, and on top of that, we have a center they won't be able to take away, so we'll have a very large spatial advantage. Exactly. So when we play this c3, they should capture the pawn. That's two extra pawns. We could recover this pawn, but no, look how aggressive this gambit is, playing bishop to c4. You know that in chess, the first one to get checkmate wins, not the first one to eat the most pawns. Therefore, you must be very careful when capturing pawns, especially if you're giving your opponent a lot of initiative. For example, capturing this pawn here would already be quite doubtful, because then we would allow this bishop capture. And it's true that we have two extra pawns from the black piece's perspective, but the development is so brutally aggressive. Notice that the queen can come out through here, along this diagonal, and carry out tremendous attacks when black hasn't even moved a single piece yet. And this doesn't make up for the two extra pawns at all. That's why the player with the black pieces here, with a slightly conservative tone, played this knight to f6. A very interesting move. He's telling white, hey, do whatever you want, but I'm going to attack this point right here. Therefore, the white pieces have several options here. The first would be to pressure the knight with e5, which might not be a good idea, although it may seem very tempting, because black would enjoy this good move d5, attacking white's bishop, and any exchange of pieces or even queens benefits the black player. Why? Because he has extra material. You know that when you have extra material, you should try to trade pieces to reach an endgame with a material advantage. So this e5 move doesn't seem that good, does it? A very interesting move, without a doubt, would be to recover the pawn with knight takes e3. But the white player, who was very aggressive, played knight to f3. I'm a bit clumsy today, forgive me, knight to f3. With what idea? With the idea of, if you want, capture this pawn, because I'm going to castle. I'll put the rook on e1 and I'll pressure you, but a lot, a lot, a lot. Also, I have ideas of placing the queen on d5, threatening checkmate, attacking the knight, and I'm completely sure that you're going to suffer. That's why the black player here, with perhaps good judgment, decided not to take so many pawns, but rather to develop the pieces correctly. By the way, I'm going to leave the Danish Gambit tutorial right here in the description in case you want to learn how to play it, okay? The idea is that now white, well, it seems they've already made quite a few. Let's put it this way. Time losses when losing pawns, and they decide that it's now time to recover at least one pawn. Let's evaluate the position for a moment. Does black have an extra pawn? but white has better development and also a central pawn. We could say that the position is quite balanced. According to the engines, black is better. Why? Because they have an extra pawn, and engines defend everything. But for humans, it's quite difficult to deal with such direct attacks, especially when the pieces are so well developed. D6 from black preventing this pawn from advancing, castling. The game continues with black also castling, and here begins the most aggressive move of the game, because believe it or not, the game doesn't have much left to finish. In fact, the white player, I'll tell you, is going to win in a few moves. Logically, black's inaccuracy will also contribute to making this possible, right? If black played perfectly, this wouldn't happen. However, there is no human being capable of playing perfectly to date. White plays the aggressive move, knight to c5, knight to g5. Many of you will say, let's see, it's clear what it's threatening. He's threatening this f7 point with both the bishop and the knight. First off, I'm going to tell you one thing. It's well known that it's usually not a good trade to swap our bishop and knight on f7 for a pawn and a rook. It's not usually a good objective, okay? However, there are exceptions. And here, what black really should have done is, we can counter white's attack and say, look, I'll develop my knight to c6, and if you want to give up your knight for f7, no problem. I'll take with the rook, bishop takes, king takes, and I'll simply have two pieces for a rook. Because remember, we'd already be up a pawn. Therefore, black wouldn't have much of a problem here. However, black logically played h6, which is a major inaccuracy. And I'm going to explain why. What he was doing was saying, hey, come on, take this pawn, if you've got the guts. Let's put it that way. And indeed, I don't think the white player thought about it much, and he captured this pawn. And I'll tell you why, because now the situation changes a lot. Let's move forward a few more moves. It's obvious the knight must be taken, otherwise the pawn is just lost for nothing. Rook takes. There is no need to recapture immediately, because sometimes the threat is much stronger than the execution, and this rook can't go anywhere anyway, because it's pinned. Yesterday, I uploaded a class on absolute and relative pins in the Academy, okay? It's in the description if you want to join, for those of you who aren't in yet. And the idea is that we can then exploit this pin, and for now, until the king moves away, we can keep up the pressure without having to capture. And here's the idea. As to why white decided to go for this, when it's usually not a good idea, it's because now this move e5 is extremely powerful, since black's queen is left completely undefended, meaning this pawn can't be taken because the queen would be lost. Do you see the difference if this knight had been developed to c6 instead of the pawn? The queen would be well defended, and all this might not have much of a future. Therefore, black must move this knight away. And the question is, okay, and where do they move it? Because there's really a lot of pressure. I'm going to advance, I'm going to capture, I have several threats. Black played knight g5. And watch out, the best move would have been knight h7, staying passive, but that's very scary. What was black's idea? That playing knight g4 has the following idea. Although it's very risky because white's move e6 makes a lot of sense, right? It cuts off the bishop's defense of the knight and threatens the what? Black thought the following. Here, I'll play queen h5 and watch out because I'm threatening checkmate in one. I'm also threatening the f2 point with 4 pieces. So let's see, white player, maybe you're being a little too clever here. But logically, black misjudged the situation. The game continued in the following way. Pawn takes rook, taking advantage of the check, so the king has to move. It can't be captured as it's well defended. King f8, and now this checkmate must be stopped, which is done with the move bishop f4. It's always better to try to defend the castle position without having to move these pawns. When you have the castle with the 3 pawns like this, it means you have the perfect castle. When you start making pawn moves, you already create weaknesses that black could attack. Therefore, a much better move, bishop 4. Black went for the attack. Knight takes f2. The queen is threatened, and discovered checks are threatened. Logically, it wouldn't be a good idea at all to do rook takes knight. Because then, for example, queen takes bishop could follow, the rook would be pinned, and this would be a massive danger. Therefore, here, white has to move the rook, the queen. But what happens? That by moving the queen, what is threatened? Checkmate in one. Therefore, they must proceed with great precision. Knight g4. Discover check. King h1. Be careful, this bishop can't move because then a spectacular checkmate would follow. And now, black must prepare a defense against the checkmate on the back rank. See it? How do they do it? Well, with bishop d7, it makes perfect sense. Not only does it defend, but it also prepares an entry via c6 to directly attack the king. As you can see, this is turning into a double-edged battle. And although it seems both sides have chances to win, there's only one side that can win. And it's the one with the white pieces, because the attack is decisive. How would you keep pressing here? I'll let you pause the video if you want to try to study with me. I'm going to give the solution right now. The idea is to bring the other rook into the attack. No matter how much the checkmate is defended, the threat remains the same. Queen d8, check. When the bishop captures, then recapture with the rook, and it would still be checkmate. Therefore, exactly the same checkmate as before is being threatened again. That's why black cannot play. Bishop c6 to attack, but instead they have to play knight c6, where the rook comes to defend this point here. And now, white wins in 3 moves. You can pause the video to see if you find the checkmate, because it's spectacular. Take this as a tactical exercise, and take all the time you need. Careful, in a game you usually have 20 or 30 minutes to think, so don't worry if you don't find it at first. I'm going to give the solution because here, white calculated perfectly that queen d8 is the winning move. Yes, giving up the queen, but what happens? That when this queen is captured, we're not going to capture with the rook, but with the pawn, promoting to another queen. And now look at what's happening. We're unleashing the rook's discovered attack. And when the bishop captures the queen, it's nothing less than a double check with bishop takes d6. Check with the bishop and check with the rook, and thanks to the light square bishop, this is checkmate. Which make a spectacular, hyper-aggressive game of the Danish Gambit, right? I hope you loved it. As you know, I'll leave both the Danish Gambit video and the link to the Academy in the description below if you're interested. You know, we have a launch price right now, and if you join at this price, it'll be locked in forever. And if not, well, we'll still be here every day with the free video. Hope you enjoy it. Leave a like, and we'll see you tomorrow in the next video, friends. Bye.